She exposed a billionaire's wife and became a hero. 3 weeks later, she got a letter that made her wish she'd never spoken that woman's name. What was in that letter changed everything she thought she knew about revenge, power, and the price of truth. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll question everything you believe about justice. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. 9 months after Victoria Ashford walked out of the Golden Rose for the last time, Rachel Bennett sat in her new office overlooking the Thames. The view was spectacular, all glass and steel, and the grey ribbon of water cutting through London like a vein. David Chun's investigation firm occupied the entire 15th floor of a building in Canary Wharf, and Rachel had her own office now, with her name on the door in clean black letters. She should have felt triumphant. She'd rebuilt her life from nothing, turned her greatest failure into her greatest opportunity. But lately, something had been gnawing at her. A feeling she couldn't quite name, like a splinter buried too deep to see, but painful enough to feel with every movement. "Rachel?" David knocked on her open door, his kind face creased with concern. "You've been staring at that file for 20 minutes without turning a page." She blinked, looking down at the divorce case she was supposed to be reviewing. "Sorry, just thinking." "About Victoria Ashford?" Rachel looked up sharply. David smiled gently. He'd been doing this work for 30 years. He could read people like books. "It's normal," he said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Your first major case, the one that changed everything. It stays with you. But there's something else, isn't there? Something bothering you about how it ended." Rachel closed the file. "Do you think I was cruel to her?" David raised his eyebrows. "The woman who terrorized people for a decade? Who made young men cry and destroyed careers for sport? I know what she did. But I keep thinking about that look on her face when I said her real name. She looked terrified. She looked broken." Rachel turned toward the window, watching the city sprawl beneath them. "I've been investigating people for you for months now. Cheating spouses, embezzling employees, con artists. And I've learned something. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has a past they're running from. What makes Victoria's different? What gave me the right to weaponize hers?" The question hung in the air between them. David was quiet for a long moment. "I can't answer that for you," he finally said. "But I can tell you this. The difference between investigation and cruelty is intention. You didn't expose Victoria to hurt her. You exposed her to stop her from hurting others. That matters." After he left, Rachel sat alone with her thoughts. The truth was more complicated than David knew. She'd enjoyed it. Not the fear on Victoria's face exactly, but the power. The moment when she'd held all the cards and Victoria had none. The rush of bringing down someone who seemed untouchable. That feeling scared her more than she wanted to admit. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her open it. "This is Lawrence Ashford. I need to speak with you. It's about Victoria. It's urgent." Rachel stared at the message. She hadn't spoken to Lawrence since his phone call 6 months ago. The divorce had been finalized 3 months back, making headlines in all the society pages. Lawrence had been generous in the settlement, which surprised no one. He was that kind of man, kind even to those who'd hurt him. She typed back, "When and where?" His response came immediately, "My office. Tonight at 8 p.m. Please come alone." The formal tone made her nervous. She tried calling, but he didn't answer. Just sent an address in Mayfair and nothing else. Rachel spent the rest of the day distracted, running through possibilities. What could Victoria have done now? Was Lawrence in trouble? Or was this something else entirely? At 7:45, she left her office and took the tube to Green Park. Lawrence's office was in one of those buildings that whispered old money, all white stone and brass fixtures. The lobby was empty except for a security guard who checked her ID and waved her toward the private elevator. The lift opened directly into Lawrence's penthouse office. The space was beautiful in an understated way, leather and dark wood and walls lined with books that looked actually read rather than decorative. Lawrence stood by the window, his back to her, shoulders hunched. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning around. His voice sounded older than she remembered, worn thin. "What's this about, Mr. Ashford?" He turned then, and Rachel caught her breath. He'd aged years and months. His hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines bracketed his mouth. But it was his eyes that shocked her. They were haunted, hollow. "Victoria's dead," he said simply. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "What?" 3 days ago. She overdosed on sleeping pills in her apartment in Paris. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he'd used up all his feelings and had none left. The police ruled it accidental, but I found something. A letter. Addressed to you. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Rachel's name was written on it in elegant script. Her hands trembled as she took it. I haven't read it, Lawrence said. But I needed you to know. Before you heard it somewhere else, before it became another piece of gossip in this terrible city. He walked to his desk, poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. She spent the last 9 months alone in that apartment. Refused to see anyone, including me. I tried, Even after everything, I tried to help her. Rachel's throat was tight. She couldn't open the envelope. Not yet. Mr. Ashford, I'm so sorry. He laughed, a bitter sound. Are you? I'm not sure I am. Does that make me a monster too? He drank deeply. I loved her once. Or I loved who I thought she was. The woman she pretended to be. But that woman never existed, did she? It was all Vicky Brightwell, desperate and scared, playing dress up with my money. Rachel felt tears burning behind her eyes. This wasn't how the story was supposed to end. The dragon was supposed to slink away defeated but alive, learning from her mistakes, maybe even finding redemption. Not this. Never this. Rachel sat in her apartment that night, Victoria's letter unopened on the coffee table in front of her. She'd been staring at it for 2 hours, unable to make herself break the seal. Outside, London hummed with its usual nighttime symphony of sirens and traffic and distant music. But in her small flat, everything was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. Each tick felt like an accusation. Finally, as midnight approached, she picked up the envelope. Her hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to open it. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery, covered in that same elegant handwriting. Dear Rachel, it began. I imagine you're surprised to hear from me. Or perhaps you're not. Perhaps you knew this was always how my story would end. People like me, built on lies and desperation, we don't get happy endings. We get exposure, shame, and silence. I won't apologize for what I did at the Golden Rose. I was exactly as cruel as you remember. Every person I hurt deliberately. It made me feel powerful, which was the only way I knew how to feel anything other than terrified. You asked Victoria Sterling who she was, and she couldn't answer because Victoria Sterling was a ghost. A beautiful, elegant, cruel ghost that I built out of magazine clippings and etiquette books and sheer desperate will. I wore her like armor for 10 years, and she kept Vicky Brightwell safely buried. Until you dug her up. I want you to know something. When I walked out of that restaurant, I wasn't angry at you. I was relieved. Do you understand? For the first time in a decade, someone knew the truth, and the world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. I didn't disappear. But then I went home to my empty mansion, and I realized something terrible. Without Victoria Sterling, I was nobody. Vicky Brightwell was a girl I'd spent 15 years running from. I couldn't go back to being her even if I wanted to. But Victoria was gone too, destroyed the moment you spoke that name. So who was I? The question ate at me every day. Every morning I woke up not knowing who to be, what mask to wear. The divorce papers called me Victoria Ashford, but that was just another name for a woman who never existed. Lawrence tried to help. He offered therapy, money, support. But how could I explain to him that the woman he married was a performance, that every moment of our marriage was me acting a part? He deserved better than a liar, better than a frightened girl from Manchester playing dress-up. I'm not writing this to make you feel guilty. That's not why I'm writing at all. I'm writing because I need you to understand something important, something I only figured out too late. You were right to stop me. What I did to those servers, to Daniel, to Thomas, to all those people over the years, that was unforgivable. I convinced myself I was just maintaining standards, protecting my position, but the truth is I was spreading my own pain around because it was the only way I knew how to make it smaller. When you're terrified every moment of being discovered, when you're constantly performing, you start to hate everyone who seems comfortable in their own skin. Those servers, they were just living their lives, being themselves. I punished them for having what I couldn't have, authenticity. But here's what I need you to understand. When you exposed me, you didn't destroy a monster. You destroyed a scared girl who'd built a monster costume to hide inside. And without that costume, without Victoria or Vicky, there was nothing left. I'm not blaming you. I built this trap myself. Every cruelty, every lie, every calculated performance was a choice I made. You just held up a mirror and made me see what I'd become. I'm writing this letter because I need someone to know the truth. The whole truth. Not the story people will tell about the billionaire's wife who fell from grace. Not the gossip or the headlines or the whispered scandals. The truth is this. I was a girl from Manchester who wanted so desperately to be someone else that I destroyed the person I was. And then I spent 10 years being cruel because I was terrified every single day that someone would see through the performance. You saw through it, Rachel. You found Vicky Brightwell under all my expensive clothes and perfect accent. And you were brave enough to say her name out loud. I wish I'd had your courage when I was younger. I wish I'd learned that running from yourself just means you're always running. I wish I'd understood that the only thing more exhausting than being poor is pretending you never were. But wishes are for people who still have time, and I've run out of time. I don't want forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that you did nothing wrong. The consequences of my choices were always going to catch up with me. You just happened to be the one holding the mirror when they did. Take care of yourself, Rachel Bennett. You have a gift for finding the truth. Use it wisely. Use it better than I used my gifts. And remember, everyone you investigate is a person, not just a puzzle to solve. They're scared and flawed and desperate, just like I was. Just like everyone is underneath whatever masks we wear. Maybe knowing that will make a difference. Maybe it won't. But I wanted you to hear it from someone who learned it too late. Goodbye. Vicky. Rachel read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Each word felt like a weight settling on her shoulders. She'd imagined many endings to Victoria's story, but never this. Never suicide disguised as an accident. Never a letter that humanized the monster so completely. She thought about David's words. The difference between investigation and cruelty is intention. But what about consequences? What about the weight of truth? Rachel didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch watching the sky slowly lighten from black to gray to the pale blue of early morning. Victoria's letter lay on the table. Each word burned into her memory. At 6 a.m., she finally moved. She needed to talk to someone, needed to make sense of the chaos in her head. She thought about calling David, but this felt too personal, too raw for her boss. George from the Golden Rose would understand, but she'd left that world behind. Instead, she found herself texting a number she'd saved months ago but never used. Beth Collins, the woman from Manchester who'd known Vicky Brightwell before she became Victoria Ashford. This is Rachel Bennett. We spoke last year about Vicky Brightwell. I need to talk to you. It's important. The response came faster than expected. I saw the news about Victoria. You're the one who exposed her, aren't you? Call me. 30 minutes later, Rachel was on the phone with Beth, who lived in a small town outside Manchester. Beth's voice was different now, no longer casual and gossipy but cautious, even sad. I shouldn't have told you all that stuff about Vicky, Beth said immediately. I've been carrying that guilt for months. When I heard she died, I thought maybe if I just kept my mouth shut. You didn't kill her, Rachel said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. I made the choice to use that information. That's on me, not you. Beth was quiet for a moment. You want to know what she was really like? Before all the Victoria Sterling nonsense. Yes, Rachel whispered. She was brilliant, Beth said simply. That's what people forget. Vicky wasn't just some girl trying to climb the social ladder. She was genuinely smart, funny when she let herself be. But she was also the saddest person I ever knew. Beth's voice took on a distant quality, lost in memory. Her mum died when she was 15. Cancer. Her dad was a drunk who blamed Vicky for everything. She basically raised herself while working at a chip shop to pay for clothes that didn't smell like grease. And she read constantly. Not fashion magazines, though she looked at those too. She read about history, about how people became someone else, about social climbing in the Victorian era. It was like she was studying for a test her whole life. Rachel closed her eyes, picturing a teenage girl in Manchester, alone and desperate, planning her escape like a prisoner planning a jailbreak. The reality show was supposed to be her big break, Beth continued. But it went wrong. They edited her to look cheap, dramatic. The pageant finale where she had that breakdown, that wasn't just about losing. It was about seeing herself through the camera's eyes and realizing she looked exactly like what she was trying not to be. Working class. Common. Everything she'd tried to escape. What happened after? Rachel asked. She disappeared. Completely. Changed her phone number, deleted her social media, left Manchester without telling anyone where she was going. I thought maybe she'd killed herself even back then. But apparently, she went to London and reinvented herself. Spent years perfecting the accent, the manners, the whole performance. By the time she met Lawrence Ashford, Victoria Sterling was real enough to fool everyone. Except she wasn't real, Rachel said softly. She was just another costume. Yeah, Beth agreed. But you know what the worst part is? Vicky would have been fine just being herself. She was smart enough, interesting enough. But she couldn't see that. All she could see was the chip shop girl in the too tight jeans. So she built a woman so far from that girl that she got lost along the way. After they hung up, Rachel sat thinking about Beth's words. She thought about Lawrence's comment. I loved who I thought she was, but that woman never existed. How many people loved Victoria Ashford? Probably dozens, in a superficial society way. But who loved Vicky Brightwell? Who even knew her well enough to love her? Rachel's phone rang. It was George from the Golden Rose. I heard about Mrs. Ashford, he said without preamble. Are you okay? The simple question broke something in Rachel. She started crying, really crying, for the first time since Lawrence had told her the news. I killed her, George, she sobbed. I exposed her and she couldn't handle it, and now she's dead. No, George said firmly. No, Rachel. Listen to me. I worked for that woman for 15 years. I watched her destroy person after person. What you did, you stopped her from hurting more people. The fact that she couldn't live with being exposed, that's not your fault. That's on her. But the letter, Rachel tried to explain through tears. She wrote me a letter, George. She was just scared. She was just a girl who wanted to escape poverty and made some terrible choices. She didn't deserve to die. George sighed. Maybe not. But she didn't deserve to torture people either. Rachel, the staff here, we all feel terrible about what happened. Nobody wanted her dead. But we also remember Daniel crying in the back room after she humiliated him. We remember Thomas losing his university fund. We remember dozens of people she hurt for no reason except her own fear. He paused, his voice gentler. You can feel sorry for her and still know what you did was necessary. Both things can be true. That afternoon, Rachel went to the Golden Rose for the first time since she'd left. The lunch rush was over, and the restaurant was quiet. Mr. Pelton saw her come in and waved her to a back table. The staff gathered around her, one by one. George, Daniel, the chef Anton, servers she'd barely known. They'd all heard about Victoria. How are you holding up? Daniel asked. He looked older now, more confident. He'd been promoted to head waiter after Rachel left. Honestly? I don't know, Rachel admitted. I keep wondering if I did the right thing. Anton, the chef who'd been so angry about the soup incident, leaned forward. Miss Rachel, let me tell you something. My daughter, she's training to be a doctor. Last month, I asked her what's the hardest part of the job. You know what she said? Rachel shook her head. She said sometimes you have to cut out the infection to save the patient. And yes, cutting hurts. It leaves scars. But if you don't do it, the whole body dies. He looked at the gathered staff. This restaurant, we are the body. Mrs. Ashford was the infection. You cut it out. We're still here, healthier than we've been in years. Maybe she didn't survive the cutting, but that doesn't mean you were wrong to do it. The others nodded in agreement. For 3 weeks after Victoria's death, Rachel threw herself into her work with an intensity that worried David. She worked 12-hour days, took on extra cases, did anything to avoid being alone with her thoughts. But at night, alone in her apartment, Victoria's letter haunted her. Everyone you investigate is a person, not just a puzzle to solve. The words echoed constantly. Rachel found herself looking at her cases differently now, seeing not just facts to uncover, but lives that would be changed by what she discovered. A cheating husband was also a father of 3. An embezzling accountant was also a gambling addict trying to pay off debts. Each truth she uncovered had consequences that rippled outward in ways she couldn't control. David noticed. Of course he did. You're second-guessing every investigation, he said one evening, finding her staring at a file without moving. Rachel, this isn't sustainable. How do we know when we're helping versus when we're just destroying people? She asked. David sat down heavily. That's the question that keeps every good investigator up at night. And the answer is we don't always know. But we can ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. Are we seeking truth to help someone? Or are we seeking it to hurt someone? What if both are true? Rachel countered. What if helping one person means destroying another? Then we make sure the person we're helping deserves it, and the person being exposed brought it on themselves through their own actions. He studied her carefully. Victoria Ashford chose to be cruel. You didn't make her terrorize those servers. You just held her accountable. But I enjoyed it, Rachel confessed, the words tumbling out. That moment when I had all the power and she had none. I liked it, David. What does that make me? David was quiet for a long moment. Human, he finally said. It makes you human. Power feels good, especially when you've been powerless. The question isn't whether you enjoyed that moment. The question is what you do with that knowledge now. That night, Rachel made a decision. She needed to understand Vicky Brightwell completely, not just the surface facts, but the whole person. Not for revenge or exposure, but for understanding. Maybe even for forgiveness, though she wasn't sure who needed forgiving more, Vicky or herself. She started where all good investigations begin. At the beginning. She traveled to Manchester on a gray Tuesday morning. The city was industrial and proud, with red brick buildings and streets that had seen better days. Rachel found the neighborhood where Vicky had grown up, a working-class area with small terraced houses and corner shops. The chip shop where Vicky had worked was still there, though under different ownership. Rachel went inside, ordered cod and chips, and asked the woman behind the counter if she remembered the Brightwell family. Brightwell? The woman frowned, thinking. That was the family in number 42, wasn't it? Sad story, that. The mum died young, and the dad drank himself to death a few years later. There was a daughter, but she disappeared. Ran off to London, I heard. What was she like? The daughter. The woman's expression softened. Vicky. Lovely girl, really. Worked here for a couple years. Always had her nose in a book between orders. She was desperate to get out of Manchester. You could see it in her eyes. Can't say I blame her, really. She had nothing here except bad memories. Rachel walked to number 42. The house was occupied now by a different family, but she stood outside looking at it, trying to imagine a teenage Vicky trapped in that small space, dreaming of escape. Next, she tracked down Vicky's old school. The building was worn and underfunded, with graffiti on the walls and bars on the windows. Rachel spoke with a teacher who'd been there long enough to remember Vicky Brightwell. Smart as a whip, that one, the teacher said, a woman named Mrs. Patterson with kind eyes and gray hair. But she never fit in. The other girls made fun of her clothes, her accent, everything. She started trying to talk different, act different. By the time she was 16, she barely sounded like she was from Manchester at all. Did anyone help her? Rachel asked. Mrs. Patterson looked sad. We tried, but she wouldn't accept help. She saw it as charity, as proof that she was poor and desperate. She wanted to do everything herself, on her own terms. Pride, I suppose. Or maybe just fear that accepting help meant admitting she needed it. Rachel spent hours in the Manchester library, reading through old newspapers, finding mentions of Vicky Brightwell. A small article about her winning a local beauty contest at 17. Another about her getting a scholarship to a community college, though she never attended. Each piece of information added depth to the picture. She wasn't a monster who became human. She was a human who built a monster costume to hide behind. Finally, Rachel did something she'd been avoiding. She found archived footage of Motorway Dreams online and watched every episode featuring Vicky. It was painful viewing. The show portrayed her as vain and shallow, but Rachel could see the desperation underneath. Every time Vicky posed for the camera, every time she practiced her smile, she was trying so hard to be something more than what she was. The finale episode, the beauty pageant where Vicky had her breakdown, was devastating. She'd been leading in the competition all night, the clear favorite. But when they announced the runner-up and it was her name they called, something in Vicky shattered. She grabbed her second-place tiara and threw it on the ground, screaming that they'd ruined everything, that this was her only chance, that she couldn't go back to being nobody. The cameras captured every moment of her breakdown, turning her pain into entertainment. Watching it years later, Rachel felt sick. This wasn't a spoiled brat throwing a tantrum. This was a drowning person going under for the last time. The show's host had tried to comfort her, but Vicky pushed him away, mascara running down her face, screaming, "You don't understand. I can't go back. I can't be her anymore." Rachel closed the laptop, understanding now what she hadn't before. Vicky hadn't wanted to be rich or famous. She'd wanted to stop being Vicky Brightwell, the poor girl from Manchester with the dead mother and drunk father. She'd wanted to stop being nobody. And that desire had eventually killed her. Rachel returned to London changed. Not healed, exactly, but different. Understanding doesn't erase guilt, but it shapes it into something you can carry without being crushed by the weight. She asked David for a week off and spent it writing. Not a report or an investigation, but something else entirely. Vicky Brightwell's real story. Not the monster version or the victim version, but the complicated truth. A girl who suffered, who made terrible choices, who hurt people while being hurt herself. A human story, messy and sad and true. When she finished, she had 40 pages of carefully researched, honestly written narrative. She printed 2 copies. One she sealed in an envelope and mailed to Lawrence Ashford with a note. This is who your wife really was. Not the performance, not the cruelty, but the person underneath. I thought you deserved to know. The second copy she kept for herself. 3 days later, Lawrence called her. Thank you, he said simply. I read it twice. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand. I think that's all I needed, really. To understand. I needed to understand too, Rachel admitted. For my own sake as much as yours. You know what surprised me most? Lawrence said. Reading about her childhood, about how hard she worked to escape poverty. I would have helped her. If she'd just told me the truth about who she was, I would have loved her anyway. The real her, not the performance. I think she couldn't believe that, Rachel said softly. She couldn't believe anyone would love Vicky Brightwell. No, Lawrence agreed. She couldn't. And that's the real tragedy, isn't it? She had what she wanted, security, stability, someone who cared about her, but she was too afraid to let herself have it. After they hung up, Rachel sat thinking about love and truth and the masks people wear. She thought about Victoria's letter. Everyone you investigate is a person, not just a puzzle to solve. The next Monday, Rachel walked into David's office and asked for a meeting. I need to change how I work, she told him. I need to know who I'm helping and why before I take a case. I need to know the truth I'm finding is being used to help, not just to hurt. David studied her carefully. You're asking to be more selective. Yes. That could mean less money. Fewer cases. I know. David smiled slightly. Good. I was wondering when you'd figure this out. The best investigators aren't the ones who find the most truth. They're the ones who find the right truth for the right reasons. You're ready for that now. Rachel started taking different cases. She still investigated, still found secrets, still exposed lies. But she chose carefully. She worked for people who genuinely needed help, not people seeking revenge. She exposed abusers and con artists, not just scared people protecting themselves. And she started teaching. David's firm began offering classes for young investigators, and Rachel led sessions on ethics in investigation. She told them about Victoria Ashford, about the weight of truth, about the responsibility that comes with the power to expose. Information is a weapon, she told a class of eager young investigators. And like any weapon, it can be used to protect or to harm. Before you expose someone's secrets, ask yourself why. Are you doing this to help someone who's being hurt? Or are you doing it because it makes you feel powerful? She told them about Vicky Brightwell, though she didn't use her real name. She told them about a girl who built a monster costume and forgot how to take it off. About the responsibility that comes with looking behind people's masks. Some secrets deserve to be exposed, she said. Abuse, fraud, danger to others. Those secrets protect bad people and hurt good ones. But some secrets are just people trying to survive their past. Learning to tell the difference, that's what makes you not just a good investigator, but a good person. 6 months after Victoria's death, Rachel visited her grave. It was in a small cemetery outside London, a simple headstone that read, Victoria Ashford, 1978 to 2025. Finally at peace. Rachel knelt beside it, placing a small bouquet of flowers on the grass. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not for stopping you. You needed to be stopped. But I'm sorry that stopping you meant you couldn't see any way forward. I'm sorry no one helped you before it got that bad. I'm sorry you spent your whole life running from yourself. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm trying to do better now. I'm trying to remember that everyone I investigate is a person, just like you were. Scared, flawed, desperate. I'm trying to use what I know for good, not just for power. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of grass and earth. I hope you found peace, Rachel said finally. I hope wherever you are, you're not running anymore. I hope you're just Vicky, and that's enough. She stood, brushing grass from her knees. As she walked back to her car, she thought about endings and beginnings, about the stories we tell about people and the truth underneath those stories. Victoria Ashford's story didn't have a happy ending. But it had a true one, and truth, Rachel had learned, was more important than happiness. Truth was the foundation everything else was built on. She drove back to London thinking about her next case, A woman who needed help proving her business partner was embezzling. Simple, clear-cut, the kind of investigation where the truth would help someone who deserved help. Rachel Bennett had learned something in the year since she'd confronted Victoria Ashford in the Golden Rose. Power wasn't about humiliating people or exposing their secrets. Real power was about choosing carefully when to use the truth you found and when to let it stay buried. She wasn't perfect. She still made mistakes, still sometimes enjoyed the moment of revelation too much. But she was trying every day to be better. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. Try to be better than we were yesterday. Try to use our gifts wisely. Try to remember that everyone we meet is fighting a battle we know nothing about. Even monsters. Especially monsters. Because sometimes, if you look close enough, you discover the monster was just a scared person all along. The end. This is the story of how Rachel Bennett learned that truth is a weapon that must be wielded with wisdom. That power without compassion is cruelty. That everyone has a story beneath their story. And sometimes the most important thing an investigator can do is remember that the people they expose are people, not just puzzles to be solved. Victoria Ashford, or Vicky Brightwell, made terrible choices. She hurt people who didn't deserve it. But she was also a product of pain and fear and a desperate desire to escape a past that felt like a prison. Rachel didn't forgive her, but she understood her. And that understanding changed everything.